On a balmy Saturday afternoon, in the serene suburban town of Riverton, the sun cast a warm, golden light over tree-lined streets and quaint storefronts. Families meandered through the local park, children darted toward the playground with gleeful shouts, and neighbors exchanged pleasantries as they strolled to the farmers' market. The air buzzed with the gentle hum of a peaceful weekend, a scene so idyllic it seemed almost untouched by the complexities of the wider world. For Jalen Carter, a young black teenager with a quiet determination in his step, this day held a purpose far beyond simply enjoying the tranquil atmosphere. He had one mission: to purchase the perfect birthday gift for his little sister, Aaliyah, a silver charm bracelet from Belmont Jewelers, the town's most esteemed jewelry store. For months, Jalen had worked tirelessly at Parker's Coffee House, pouring steaming cups of coffee and wiping down tables, all while carefully saving every tip and paycheck. He had walked past Belmont Jewelers countless times, pausing to gaze at the bracelet in its elegant display, envisioning the delight that would spread across Aaliyah's face when she unwrapped it. Today, with his wallet tucked securely in his pocket, the weight of his hard-earned money felt like a promise fulfilled, a symbol of his devotion to his sister and a quiet defiance against the struggles their family had weathered. As he approached the store, its polished glass windows sparkled in the sunlight, reflecting the world behind him. He adjusted his hoodie, ensuring the neatly ironed shirt beneath was visible, aware of the assumptions some might make about a young black man in casual attire. With a steadying breath, he pushed open the heavy glass door, a delicate chime signaling his entrance. Inside, Belmont Jewelers exuded luxury. Glass cases gleamed under bright lights, showcasing rows of gold and silver treasures resting on velvet cushions. The faint aroma of polished wood and subtle perfume hung in the air, mingling with the soft murmurs of well-dressed customers, mostly older women whose jewelry flashed as they admired pieces far beyond Jalen's imagination. He paid little mind to their fleeting glances, his attention fixed on the bracelet he had come to claim. Behind the counter stood Margaret Whitmore, a middle-aged white woman with neatly coiffed blonde hair and a demeanor that shifted the moment. She laid eyes on him. Her expression, initially one of practiced indifference, hardened into something colder, her lips tightening, her hands gripping the counter's edge, her eyes narrowing as if assessing a threat. Jalen sensed the change. Immediately, a familiar weight settling over him. It was the unspoken question he had faced too often. Why are you here? He had felt this scrutiny before, the way it clung to him like a shadow in places where people assumed he didn't belong. But he pressed forward, offering a polite smile as he pointed to the bracelet in the case. "I would like to see that." "One, please," he said, his voice calm and measured, a tone his mother had instilled in him for moments exactly like this. Margaret didn't move. She crossed her arms, tilting her head with a faint smirk. "Are you certain?" she asked, her words laced with doubt. "That piece is rather costly." Jalen's chest tightened, but he kept his face neutral. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, revealing the stack of cash he had saved. "I am certain," he replied firmly. "I have the money. Right here." Margaret's gaze lingered on the bills, her lips twitching as if their presence insulted her. Rather than easing, her posture grew more rigid, her fingers hovering near the phone on the counter. She didn't reach for the bracelet. Instead, she let out a soft, mocking laugh. "And where did you manage to get all of that?" she asked, her tone deceptively light but sharp with insinuation. Jalen's shoulders stiffened. "Excuse me?" he said, though he already knew the direction this was taking. "It is just an unusual amount of cash for someone your age," she continued, her eyebrow arching. "Did you perhaps borrow it, or stumble upon it somewhere?" Jalen's jaw tightened. He drew a slow breath, forcing himself to remain composed. "I work at Parker's Coffee House," he said, each word deliberate. I saved it myself. Margaret hummed skeptically, tapping her manicured nails against the counter. Oh, I see, she said, her voice dripping with disbelief. And you expect me to accept that explanation? Yes, Jalen answered, his tone flat as he fought, the anger simmering within him. Margaret chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Well, I must say, I am almost impressed you thought you could deceive me, she said, finally stepping toward the display case. I have been in this business long enough to recognize when something is amiss. Jalen's hands clenched into fists at his sides, but he willed them to relax. This was supposed to be straightforward. He hadn't come here for this. Can I please just see the bracelet? He asked, his patience fraying. With an exaggerated sigh, Margaret retrieved the velvet tray and set it on the counter. Handle it carefully, she warned, her voice cutting. It is worth more than you likely earn in a year. Jalen bit back a retort, focusing instead on the bracelet. He lifted it gently, the silver cool against his skin, the tiny charms, glinting as they dangled. It was everything he had hoped for Aaliyah, but as he turned it to inspect it further, the metal slipped from his grasp, falling to the counter with a faint clink before tumbling to the floor. Before he could bend to retrieve it, Margaret erupted. Oh my goodness, I knew it, she shrieked, her voice slicing through the store. Every eye turned toward them. Jalen froze. Wait, I knew you were up to no good. Margaret snapped, pointing at him with a trembling finger. You were going to steal it, weren't you? Thought you could slip it away unnoticed. Jalen's stomach lurched. No, that is not... Margaret darted to the phone, dialing with frantic urgency. Send the police immediately, she shouted into the receiver. We have a thief here, a young black male in a hoodie attempting to rob us. The words hit Jalen like a physical blow. The store fell silent, the air thick with tension as customers stared, their expressions a mix of curiosity and condemnation. He could feel their judgment, the way a woman tightened her grip on her bag, the way an older man's lips pursed in silent agreement with Margaret's accusation. His mind raced, urging him to speak, to explain, but he knew it was futile. They had already decided who he was. The distant wail of sirens grew louder, an ominous sound, cutting through the once peaceful afternoon. Jalen's heart pounded as the reality of the situation crashed over him. He had always known this could happen, had been warned by his mother, had seen it play out in stories shared in hushed tones. But facing it now was a different beast entirely. Margaret, still clutching the phone, barked into it with authority. Yes, hurry, he's still here, denying everything, but I caught him in the act. Her eyes flicked to Jalen, a triumphant gleam in them. And he is becoming hostile, she added, her voice dropping for effect. Jalen's fists tightened at his sides. Hostile? He hadn't raised his voice, hadn't moved an inch. Yet she was weaving a tale that everyone seemed ready to swallow. The sirens drew closer, and then the door burst open as two police officers stormed in. There he is, Margaret exclaimed, pointing at Jalen as if identifying a notorious criminal. He tried to steal from me. Sergeant Daniel Blake, a broad-shouldered man with a stern face, stepped forward, his hand already on his handcuffs. Sir, I need you to show me your hands, he ordered. Jalen's breath hitched, his body screaming to react, but he held still. I didn't do anything, he said, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside him. Blake's tone hardened. Show me your hands now. Margaret huffed dramatically. He is arguing after I caught him red-handed, she said, gesturing to the bracelet on the floor. The audacity of some people. The phrase, some people, stung. But Jalen didn't flinch. The second officer, Officer Ethan Miles, lingered back, his eyes darting between Jalen, Margaret, and the scene. He seemed less certain than Blake, but it didn't stop the older officer from advancing. Step outside, son, Blake said. Jalen's mind spun with images of what could follow, arrest, headlines, a story ending in tragedy. Margaret stood smugly, arms crossed, as if victory was hers. Jalen took a sharp breath. "Call my mother," he said. Blake snorted. "You can call her from the station." "No," Jalen insisted, his voice rising with resolve. "Call her now." Margaret laughed mockingly. "Oh, yes, let us call his mother," she sneered. "What is she going to do? Plead his case?" Jalen ignored her, pulling out his phone with deliberate calm. "Mom, I need you at Belmont Jewelers right now." The wait felt endless, the store's atmosphere suffocating with unspoken accusations. Then the door swung open, and a woman entered with an air of unshakable authority. Dressed in a crisp blazer, her heels striking the floor with purpose, she held up a badge. "I am Captain Lena Carter, Riverton Police Department," she declared, her voice ringing clear. Turning to Blake, she added, "And this is my son." The room stilled. Blake's hand faltered on his cuffs. Miles shifted uncomfortably, and Margaret's smugness evaporated, replaced by wide-eyed disbelief, Lena's piercing gaze fixed on Blake. "Sergeant, explain why my son is being threatened with arrest without so much as a question asked." Blake straightened, his voice tight. "We received a report of attempted theft, ma'am. We acted on it." "Did you?" Lena replied, her tone icy. "Because it appears you walked in, saw a young black man, and assumed guilt." Margaret jumped in, her voice shrill. "I called because he tried to take that bracelet. He dropped it. He was going to run off with it." Lena's eyes flicked to Jalen, then back to Blake. "Have you reviewed the security footage?" Blake hesitated. "We were about to—" "No, you were not," Lena interrupted, her words lethal in their precision. "You were about to detain him without evidence." The footage was pulled up and played on a screen behind the counter. It showed Jalen entering, presenting his money, and the bracelet slipping from his hand. Nothing more. No theft, no crime. Margaret's face drained of color as Lena turned to Blake. "What now, Sergeant? Are you still planning to arrest him?" Blake remained silent, his jaw tight. Lena faced Margaret. "You accused a boy who came here to buy a gift, a boy who earned his money honestly because you decided he didn't fit. If that footage contradicts your story, you will face the consequences." Margaret stammered but had no defense. The officers retreated, and Lena placed a hand on Jalen's shoulder. "Let us go, sweetheart," she said softly. As they left, Jalen met Margaret's gaze. "I just wanted a bracelet," he said, his voice steady, "but you gave me something else to remember." Outside, Lena asked, "Are you all right?" Jalen exhaled, staring back at the store. "I don't know. I thought I'd feel better." "You shouldn't have had to fight for that," Lena said, her voice heavy with unspoken pain. Later, she made a call. "Prepare a statement, investigate the call to dispatch, review Sergeant Blake's actions, and address racial profiling. Mention Margaret Whitmore by name." Days later, the story broke. News outlets covered it, social media raged, and Belmont Jewelers faced backlash. Margaret was suspended, Blake investigated. At home, Aaliyah bounded over, showing off the bracelet Lena had secured for Jalen's sake. "It's amazing," she cried, hugging him. Jalen smiled faintly. It wasn't the ending he'd dreamed of, but Aaliyah's joy made it worthwhile. For now,